Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be covering chapter 3. Chapter 3 consists of design and teamwork. Design and teamwork. So, in design, um, there are, depending on what book you're looking at and whom you are talking to, 7 to 8 steps when it comes to engineering design. And those steps consist of uh, one, identifying the need. What is the problem? In other words, identifying criteria to indicate a successful design or a solution, generating ideas, developing possible solutions, choosing from those potential solutions to find the best one, to find the most economical one that also provides the most efficiency, right? After that, you will develop a prototype of that design, then you will test it. And then if everything goes well with testing, um, you will implement it. You will go in before, not necessarily implementation or evaluation. Really, this stage is you will present it. Um, but in other cases, um, it is the steps of design is recognizing the need, right? What is the problem? Um, then understanding these are different steps that I'm actually proposing to you. So I propose these steps. Now I'm going to propose to you 8 steps and give you a sense of what that means. And then they look something like this: recognizing the need. What is the need? What is the problem? Recognizing it, such as we discussed back in the day when we didn't have a vehicle, but we needed to travel. And so traveling was the need, right? It was, or traveling and quickly was the problem. So what do we need? Well, we need to travel quickly. So how do we do it? Well, we have to come up with a solution in order to travel at a faster pace. All right, we could get on a horse, but a horse, they're like us, you know, they 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 get tired. They don't last as long. So we want to come up with something that doesn't get tired, right? And so you have to come up or design something. What is the need? You recognize the need is it takes a long time to get across this earth, right? Or how do we get across the sea? It takes time. We want a faster pace. So we have to, as engineers, come together, put our heads together to rectify or resolve that issue, understanding and defining the problem, right? So you recognize the need, but you understand and define the problem. That would be, excuse me, I don't have COVID. I don't have COVID. Something just got in my throat. You can laugh. You do have the option to laugh at that joke. It was a joke. But anyways, so after you recognize the need, you have to understand and define the problem. Like I said before, you recognize that you need to travel at a fast pace. All right, so what is you have to understand and define the problem. What is the problem? What is actually the problem? Transportation. Our transportation is limited and it is slow. It is limited, meaning we don't have a large source of transportation. And I'm not talking about today, I'm talking about back in the day, like caveman day, before the wheel came out. And before the wheel, I know y'all probably can't, that's archaic. You can't think like, what? For the wheel? There was a point in time where we didn't have a wheel? Not wheel, like somebody died, like wheel, like WHEEL, wheel, like wheel. Before that, so understanding that and defining the problem. our transportation is limited, right? And how fast we can get there is also limited. So you define that, right? And then you do research, which isn't pointed out here, right? We just jump into generating ideas, developing a possible solution. But before you could get into all of that, right, you want to do research. You define your problem and then you do research. Research on what? Well, research on possible solutions that may already exist. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? If there was a wheel already existing, then you go get it. And how can I improve on that wheel, right? And so you research and research and preparation. So you research, you do research, and then you prepare for how you're going to resolve that solution. You look around. What can you find? Animals are animals. Well, you also you use the animal right while you're so trying to develop another solution. But this is a temporary solution. Horses are temporary. And then you're like, well, what if we want to travel on with multiple people? Right? And he's like, well, you got to get a lot of horses. But then, horses cost money. If you don't own a bunch of horses, then how are you going to you can't put your family on one horse. You have to get multiple horses. And then what if you got a baby? And then what if like tragedy strikes and you have to travel? So one person's going to be on a horse, one person's going to be walking, and it's going to take the same amount of time it would if we always just walk. So that's where you come up with a horse and buggy. So you come up with a buggy to carry you, right? And all of these things. But the third step obviously is research. Now, 4, I want to go to conceptualization. That's where on this particular side, that's where that comes into handy. Generating ideas and developing a possible solution. That's conceptualization. Coming up with concepts, right? Coming up with a concept to potentially resolve this issue, right? Synthesize. Synthesize. That's really pretty much the same thing. Right? You have your concept and then you synthesize. You come up with a solution from your concept. So you have multiple ideas, synthesize. Like, okay, from these multiple ideas, you come up with a solution that best resolve this problem. From number 2. 6, evaluate your solution. That is running analysis, doing calculations, right? Will your solution work? Will it hold you and your family, right? Will it carry the horse and buggy? Will it sustain? Will the axle hold up? You got to run calculations on your axle, running calculations on your wheel, checking the material. Is it strong enough, right? And that comes around with just doing calculations. But then you also have testing during this portion too, during evaluation. You have actual experiments to verify that it'll work, right? And then optimization. Optimization is maximizing whatever material you have and minimizing your cost. It's merely what optimization is. Maximizing material, maximizing space, right? Minimizing cost. And after you've done all of that, right, you come up with selected the best solution, you selected the best concept, you tested it, you created a prototype, and then tested it, and then you went through taking through a process of optimization, and then you present it. Right, then you present it. Right, and so that is the 7 or 6 steps, 6, 7, or 8 steps of engineering design. But what the one thing I didn't define was design. I know I took you through that whole process to bring you back to square one. What is design? What is design? I want you to think for a moment and just think about that. I know you're going to look it up, but what is a design? A design could be a noun. It could also be a verb. You could design a design, right? Your design is a noun, but the process of design is the verb. you designing something that's putting that into action. But what is that design? It is something we define throughout these 8 steps, 7 to 8 steps, depending on what slide you're looking at. And I will post both of these slides. You would get both sets of slides. But what is design? The book defines it as design is to create solutions. It is a process of developing solution. That's design. Another way of looking at it is a solution that you created. So design is a process to create solutions. And then the design is also a solution that you create from your process, right? But before we go any further, I want to share a video with you.
That my name is Jordan Robert, and I'm going to be talking to you about what I think is really one of the most important steps of the problem-solving process, and that's the problem defining. Albert Einstein is credited with saying, if I had 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. So that really emphasizes not only the importance of problem definition, but it also shows that the problem definition is going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort in comparison to how long it takes you to actually solve the problem. And I feel like a lot of engineers don't think about the problem-solving process this way. Whenever you begin to have customer work, that always comes with a budget, it always comes with a timeline. And it's really tempting to want to produce a solution really quickly, and that can lead to rushing through the definition part of the problem-solving process. With customer work, it rarely, if ever, comes to you fully defined. What they don't really know all the time is what is required of their product in order for it to be successful, in order for it to actually solve the problem that they're trying to solve. Say, for instance, a customer came to us and said, I really want to make a box. I want a box that is a 1-foot cube, and I really need the box to open and close. Well, that's great, but it's not a fully defined problem. We really need to know more about what problem we're trying to solve. What's going to be inside the box? Are we trying to protect what's inside the box from water, from fire? How well do we need to seal this box? Is there any chance the end user is going to want to use the box as a step stool? So these are some things that we really need to try to define up front so that we can make sure that whenever we get to the end of the process, we have a box that meets their needs. And part of defining the problem is setting requirements. It's important not only to set requirements, but to set meaningful requirements. The problem you run into if you don't set enough requirements is you get to the end of the project and your client isn't happy. Let's say we get to the end of the project, I give our customer a box. It's a waterproof box just like they wanted. It's sturdy enough that a person can stand on it if they want to use it as a step stool. And I hand it off to them. And the first time my client takes the box, they say, you know what? That's a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. Can you make it lighter? Well, that's going to be a lot harder at the end of the process than if we had set that requirement at the beginning. So again, let's go back to the beginning of the process. We should really set a maximum weight for this. And we talk to the customer and they say, okay, we agree that X amount of pounds is our maximum weight. We get to the end of the project And now we're able to hand off a box that is exactly what they wanted, and they're happy, their expectations are met, and that's wonderful. But what if they go to market that product, they put that product on the shelf, and all the customers who are their customer base take the product off the shelf and they think, this will hold all my stuff, it'll be great, and it'll be sturdy, but I really want to be able to haul this around with me really easily, and it's pretty heavy. In that case, we set a requirement, we met the requirement, but we're still not selling boxes. And that's because we didn't set a meaningful requirement. And so one way to differentiate between meeting requirements and setting meaningful requirements is to look at the difference between verification and validation. Verification is asking you, are you answering the questions correctly? Where validation is asking, are you answering the correct questions? And that's why it takes time. That's why it takes time to define the problem. One example of a product that I worked on that we were able to verify, but we were not able to validate, it was a plastic part, and it was supposed to assemble onto a sand-casted part, an existing, already manufactured, tons of them on the market, sand-cast aluminum part. So if you're not familiar with sand casting, you make molds from a pattern, and each of the molds are made out of sand. It's not the most precise manufacturing process in the world. So we created a part, we did the design work, we created a prototype. The prototype fit perfectly onto our sample sandcast part. It was beautiful. We loved it, we were happy, our client loved it, they were happy. And then they took the prototype and tried to put it on other sandcast parts that they had out in the field. And then we quickly realized that the variations part to part were far more than normal variations you see in sand casting. What happened was, not only within the same model number, within the same manufacturer, not only did you have those normal variations in size due to sand casting, but they also used different geometries for their patterns. So they had holes in different places, the holes were different sizes, and we had really relied on the placement and size of those holes in order to fit our plastic part. So here we are with a prototype that fits one part that we can find. So we set requirements, we met the requirements, we had a verified design, but it wasn't valid because it doesn't solve a problem if it only fits the one part we have in our shop. So what we should have done is spent more time on the front end. We should have done some research. The questions we should have asked, rather, are not, what are tolerances for sand casting? It should have been, what's the requirement for a good part for this manufacturer? And we would have seen on the front end that we couldn't rely as precisely on the placement and the size of those holes. And we could have come up with a solution that was more universal. And so that was really my first experience where we didn't spend enough time on the front end really making meaningful requirements and really defining the problem clearly. And that resulted in ultimately a failed project that did not go into manufacturing. And so that's why I think that proper problem definition is a necessity for a successful project.
All righty. So hope you enjoyed that video. Hope you watched it. But I really loved how she emphasized defining the problem. I really love how she emphasized that. And you think about it, there are so many parameters that goes into defining the problem. There are so many questions you have to ask when it comes to designing in general, because there'll be times where your customer may not know what they need. You know, I design products for the company that I work for, and there are times when my boss doesn't even specify everything that's needed. And if I don't ask all of the questions, you know, the correct question, then something will be left out. And then it'll be back on me to have to to go and modify whatever problem or solution that I came up with in this particular design. So it's always great to define it, and I wanted to emphasize that to you all. But the other thing that I wanted to share with you is presenting. When it comes to presenting, well, before we jump into presenting, working with a team. And let me share my screen really quickly. All right, teams. Working with a team. One thing that you're not seeing here right off the bat but is implied when it says teams need to agree on. Well, for starters, teams as a team, you're going to have to know how to communicate with people with different opinions, people that comes from different backgrounds, but also people that may be of different disciplines. If you're an electrical, you're not going to always just work with electricals. If you're chemical, you're not going to always just work with chemicals. You're going to work with people that may not even have an engineering degree. You may be working with someone that has accounting, maybe working with someone that has a business degree. You may be working with someone that has a degree in project management. So you may be working with all types of people. You may be working with a person that doesn't have a degree at all. They may just have a ton of experience. But the end goal is making the company money. That's the end goal. But in order to make a company money, you're going to have to come up with a great product that's efficient, that's safe, right? And that's marketable, right? It's going to have to be marketable. And so before you get to that, you have to know how to communicate with one another. And so communicating is key. Communicating is key. And that's something I forgot to turn on. All right, got to turn on the captions. So, where are we? Let me go back and share my screen. All right, so communication is key. So working with a team needs to agree on, and these are some of the things as a team, you working with a team, things you need to consider. The team's objective and how progress toward that objective will be measured. You have to agree on that. What is the objective? What is the end goal? What are you trying to obtain? What is the perfect solution? And if you have more than 2 or 3 people on your team, you have to come up with narrow your solutions down and then figure out which of 3 solutions will work best for after you define your problem, which of the 3 will work best. And then thinking about all of the steps that I've presented to you, maximizing your efficiency, maximizing your material strength, maximizing whatever the processes is, or minimizing steps. Which of those solutions will minimize steps when it comes to cost, labor, manufacturing, that's going to give you the best solution. And however many people that are on your team, you're going to have to agree on what will work best for the solution, right? So objective and how progress toward that objective will be measured, how the team will make decisions. You have to come up with that, how the team will ensure all members are heard, Someone will have to be a lead point. Someone will do one thing. One person will be an organizer. One maybe will be a note taker. One person, maybe you record the minutes. But you'll have to communicate all of these things prior to jumping into your project or jumping into the design. Giving feedback, focusing on the behavior, what teammates do rather than what you think is going on. All right, and it goes back to communication. Once you define the roles for everyone within your group, now when you work for a company, this is already defined for you. You come in, you know who your manager is. You know who your manager's manager is. They'll introduce themselves to you. You'll know who sales is. If you want to work directly with sales. If not, you won't know. But if you work directly with sales, you will know. You'll know who your drafters are. You know who your designers are if you're working directly with them. So these roles will already be defined, and your focus will be on what it is that you need to do, and that's always the focus. It's always focusing on what do I need to do to make the contribution to this team or this project, and that's where my focus should lie. What I need to do, right? But there's another video I want to share with you. It's once you come up with your solution and things of that nature, it's presenting. It's presenting, because I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Because how you communicate that with a room, your ideas or your solution, how you communicate those ideas in a room that may not be people that are engineers. They are not familiar with what it is that you do. They also may not understand what it is that you've done to rectify the problem. So you're going to have to know how to communicate those ideas as a team, right? With people that may not be familiar with engineering processes. So I want to share a video with you about presentations.
Hey practitioners, today I'm going to be teaching you, with the help of my friend Dana Bluin, the top 7 tips for a great presentation. Dana Bluin is an entrepreneur currently living in Bangkok, Thailand, where he is a co-founder and CEO of a company called Mango Labs. Anyways, here's some of his tips. We all have to give presentations at different points in our life. That might be for school or work or an organization that you are involved with. No matter where we give the presentation or to who, we want to make sure that it has the impact on the audience and that it's memorable. These are 7 tips that are going to ensure that you nail the presentation and leave a lasting impression on your audience. Number 1, know your audience. The first step in preparing for any presentation should be to get a better idea of who your audience is. Knowing your audience will allow you to understand the type of content they are going to be expecting with regards to depth and technical detail. You wouldn't want to give the same presentation to a group of high school students who are interested in entrepreneurship that you would to a room full of startup founders and CEOs, because their expectations and level of understanding will be on completely different levels. Dig up as much as you can about who your audience is, what industries they work in, and what positions they generally hold. This allows you to really tailor the content and delivery of the presentation in a way that will really make it stand out and be memorable. Too many times people give killer presentations at one venue to a group made up of their core audience and then bomb on the same presentation to a different group because they didn't make the changes they needed to better address the new audience. Just because you kill it in one audience doesn't mean the same exact content will replicate the reaction with all audiences. Number 2, use structures to build on ideas. If you stand up and give a presentation and all the points you want to make are just tossed around randomly and they don't make any sense, not too many people are going to enjoy your presentation, and if they remember it, it's likely that it's not for the reasons that you want them to. However, if you structure your presentation in a way that each section builds on the one before it, you help your audience connect with the content and create logical links between the concepts. This is a great way to make more complex ideas easier for the audience to understand and remember. Number 3, use visuals. Another great tool to cement those ideas in the mind of your audience is to use visuals like charts, graphs, and infographics to illustrate and communicate a concept. As many as 65% of people are considered to be visual learners, so if you don't take this approach in your presentation, you are going to ignore the vast majority of the population. Using an image, regardless of if it's a picture, graph, or chart, can be a much more potent conveyor of information and has a much more powerful impact on the audience. A single image can convey so much information, just like the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. It really is. Think of the impact this can have when explaining data or results in a presentation. If you had to stand there in front of your audience and go through every data point verbally, it can get bad quickly. And this is much more common of an occurrence than you might think. But if you're able to visualize that data for your audience with a graph or chart, you instantly make it much more understandable and memorable. Showing someone 200% growth with a graph is much more exciting than explaining it while they're looking at the raw data. For example, if I took away the screen of this video and all you saw was black, it wouldn't be near as exciting. Number 4, repetition is your friend. Having a bit of structure in your presentation goes a long way in keeping the audience engaged because they can follow the information from step to step. But even more than just structuring the flow of the presentation, you also want to build in repetition. This encourages people to remember the key points of the presentation and helps it stick, which again makes it, and you, more memorable. A classic way to go about repetition is something Dana learned early on when he started his public speaking career. Another speaker at a big regional tech event came up to him after a talk and complimented Dana on his delivery and the depth of the material, but asked why he didn't use more repetition. Dana was a bit stumped because he never really thought about that before. The other speaker suggested that Dana start telling the audience what it is he wanted to tell them, just to give them a brief rundown of the key points. After that, move right into the body of the presentation and tell them exactly what was highlighted at the beginning, but obviously with more detail and extra elements that you add in to make the presentation stick. Then end the presentation by telling them what you just told them, reminding them of the key points and a brief summary for final repetition. Using this technique helps to reinforce the main points of the presentation at least 3 times, at the beginning, middle, and end. The key is to find a way to do this that it feels natural and not overly scholastic. And that takes practice, which we'll talk about later on. Tip number 5, have a story to tell. The difference between an average presentation that people zone out of and a great presentation that keeps them engaged is how you convey the information to the audience. A great way to convey the information or key points of your presentation is to use a story. By using a story, preferably an interesting one, you get your point across and you're creating a moment in the presentation that is memorable and easier for the audience to recall later. It's also hopefully going to be something that catches their attention, pulling them into what you are saying. One of the keys here though is that it has to be a story you can tell with commitment, and it has to be true. Always be honest with your audience because if you're not, they will know and you will have lost all credibility. Tip number 6, be relatable. Being relatable is actually one of the most important factors of your delivery. You want to be someone that your audience can relate to, that they would feel comfortable with talking to. Even when giving a talk as an expert on a topic, you want the audience to feel the relation. It helps them mentally engage with your content and remember you and your talk. Most people don't feel comfortable going up and talking to a stern authority figure, and no one wants to listen to someone with no confidence. So there's a fine balance you need to strike, and here's how. The most important thing you can do to come across as more relatable is to be authentic. Be yourself. Another great way to accomplish this is to work on coming across as relaxed, which can be difficult if you're not used to presenting, but this goes a long way to helping people see you as relatable. The final way you can be more relatable is to be enthusiastic about your presentation. Your enthusiasm will transfer to your audience, and now that you have enthusiasm in common, you will begin to see as more relatable. If you can get all 3 of these techniques mastered, you will be well on your way to making it to your audience relate to you. Tip number 7, build your confidence with practice. This might be the last tip, but it is by far the most important one out of these 7. Confidence in what you do is by far the most important element of your presentation. Having confidence adds an authority to everything you say during your presentation, but you're not going to develop the confidence you need if you don't practice, and practice a lot. Whenever Dana gives a talk or presentation, he practices. He says for hours. Dana wants to make sure he has the timing down, that he knows every slide so he doesn't have to read off them. He knows what the next slide is so he can smoothly transition between them so that he will sound natural and authentic, and can explain the concepts and tell the stories with confidence. And this all comes with practice. When you are practicing a presentation, it's not enough to sit in front of your computer and go through it. You have to practice it in front of other people. Invite some friends over and have them give some feedback on your presentation, and make improvements based on their feedback. No one gets it right the first time, but practice will get you towards perfect. With these 7 tips, you should be able to put together and deliver a masterful presentation that will wow your audience and make sure that they remember you and your topic. If you guys like this collaboration, be sure to check out Dana's YouTube channel and subscribe. He has tons of videos on entrepreneurship and self-development. I hope you guys like this video and learned something. And
Alrighty. I hope you were able to gather something from those 7 steps when it comes to creating a great and memorable presentation. I love the thing that he pointed out when it comes to presentations is one is, well, mainly the one preparation. And then as he talked about in the beginning was knowing your audience. Preparation and knowing your audience. Those two, the beginning and the ending takes care of the middle, because if you are aware of who you're talking to and you are prepared to give the information, then that will take care of everything that he said in between those 2 steps. And that will conclude chapter 3's lecture. If you have any questions, please send me an email. If there's something you didn't understand fully, please let me know and I will get with you and talk to you, discuss that with you further. All right. Thank you for listening.